Hello and welcome to this overview of Roland's XS1HD multi-format matrix switcher. So it's a 4-input model with a lot of modes and features. So to start, let's go over them. So there's like 3 products in one. So you can add flexibility if you have different types of production workflows that you need to configure your switcher for. So you can either have it be a 4-in 4-out matrix switcher. There's a split mode, which is kind of like a 4-layer composition mode. And then there's a program preview switcher mode, similar to the V1HD. Plug and create, you have multi-format input scalers on all 4 inputs, so you can easily resize and reposition your input sources. It's also an EDID emulator for device compatibility. And in switcher mode, you have some effects. So you can have an aux output. You can add a destination if you want to feed, say, a presentation to the center screen. Or instead of that, you can configure it to be a Luma key and or picture-in-picture. So you can combine the picture-in-picture with the Luma key. There's also a Luma key in split mode, which we'll get into that later. So this is the panel of the XS1HD, but I want to show you the inputs and outputs before we kind of dive into the controls and menu functions of this switcher. So here are the input and output views. So you have the 4 multi-format inputs. That USB memory port is for loading still images. And then you have 4 outputs depending on the mode. So for the matrix mode, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then for the split mode, they're all the same. And then for switcher mode, 1 and 2 are program. 3 is aux if you're in aux mode. And then 4 is a quad preview multi-viewer with the menu overlay. And that said, you will see the menu overlay in output 4 in all modes, including matrix and split. And on the sides, you have audio in and out, so you can bring in RCA audio. You can also mix together all the HDMI audio sources as well. Headphone jack, RS-232 control support. And then the power buttons on the back, and then the power connectors on the side. So for this demo, I'm going to have 2 window overlays. So there are 4 outputs, but for this demo, I'm only able to show 2. So output number 1 and output number 4 are the 2 that I chose. So you can see we're in matrix mode right now. And before we begin, if you have groups of settings that you want to save or recall, if you tap the memory button, right now we're on preset 2. By default, preset 1 is last memory, so it's kind of like an auto save. So you have that as an option as well. And so if you tap and it's green, then tapping any of these will recall the settings. But if you press and hold and it turns red, then this is in save mode. So whatever you tap will overwrite the settings. So matrix mode is pretty straightforward. Right now you have columns with inputs and rows with cross points, which are like the outputs. So for instance, I'm changing output 1 source by cycling through these different inputs. Now notice that outputs 1 and 4 have both input 4 as a source, so those are the same. And you can also do a fade to black or turn it off by pressing the last button in the row. So, yep, like I was saying, these you're not going to see anything. I don't have them connected. And then here's 4. So, pretty straightforward. You also have quick controls, and these basically allow you to adjust settings without entering the menu. So you'll notice there's a lot of text printed across the panel. So if I press the video button here, it's going to like input position mode. And so I have to make sure I got input 1 selected right here on output 1 so you can see. So input position, and then you can choose which input you want to adjust. And here you can change the horizontal position, vertical position, and the zoom. So here you can see I'm zooming in a bit and making it bigger. You can push and twist to have it move much faster as well if you need to. And so if you want to reset it and you're not sure what the 100% value is, if you go into the input menu and then go to that input, you can go to the zoom control here and use this knob to adjust it. You can see this push and twist goes a lot faster, and then the regular twist you can fine-tune the value. So now it's back and reset to its original size. But that's one of the features of the scaler. So you can adjust the zoom and position of a source if you need to. If you're not able to adjust the camera or it's a computer source that you need to adjust, the scalers come in handy. So next, I want to go over to split mode. So I'm going to go into the system menu here and make a brief note about HDCP as well. There's an indicator light here. So if you enable HDCP, copy protected source like a Blu-ray player can be output through the system, so long as it's not going to a recording or streaming device. So you would turn that on to enable that device to pass through, so long as it works with your workflow. I'm going to get out of the quick edit mode here as well. So you have two menu adjusting buttons, plus you can also confirm settings with enter. So I'm going to use this to adjust the value to split mode, and I'm going to press enter to confirm, and it's going to do a soft reset. Now these aren't the default settings, these are custom settings that I set up. So one of the first things that I need to do is change the input 4. So the way to think about split mode is it's kind of like 4 layers stacked on top of each other. So crosspoint 1's on top and crosspoint 4 is on the bottom. Crosspoint 1 can have a luma key, and you can use the controls to resize and reposition these sources within it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way to the end of the input 4 menu, and I'm going to change the input source to a still image. So now you can kind of see what I was going with here. So, maybe it's the, name of the event, and then here's the presentation, and here's the speaker, and you can go back and forth in that same pip window. Or maybe I want to turn this window off and move to my second window position that I already set up. And for these, I make my adjustments in the composition menu. So this here is crosspoint 2, and you can set the window size, position, aspect ratio. You can zoom the video in the you can zoom in on the video within the window. Out of the box with split mode, you're going to only have 2 cross points active. So with the name split mode, it's kind of like you have side by side, and you can do seamless transitions between the left side and the right side with your 4 sources. When you have 4 cross points enabled in the system menu, as I'm going to show you here, it has to dip to black. So that's where you're seeing it dip to black between those. But you can turn. So by default, basically these 2 cross points are off. So you can basically do a side by side or a windowed overlay with the 2 cross points. But if you want to activate all 4, you can do that as well. And then as you can see, it's all 4 outputs get the same composition. So next, what I'm going to do is go over to switcher mode. And I'm going to change input 4 back to being an HDMI source. So the idea is you're not seamlessly switching between these different modes during a live production. It's more like you're configuring the switcher to utilize a mode for the type of production that you're doing. So here in the system menu, I'm going to go to finally switcher mode and hit enter. And you also get an indicator of what mode you're in right here. So this can be helpful if you're just plugging it up and getting the XS1 HD set up and want to confirm how it's operating. So here you can see that this is kind of like a V1 HD switcher. You have program and preset, but you also have an aux output, which the V1 HD does not have. And you can see this auto button lights up, so you can now do transitions with either this or the T-bar. So you can also set the transition time here. And this transition time also works in the matrix mode as well for how fast you want the transition where it dips to black and brings in the new source. But here you can do seamless switching between your sources here. You can do auto, or you can do that. Bring in presentation source. So Pretty straightforward video switching workflow. If you want to bring in picture-in-picture, you can cue it. First, you cue it for preview, and then bring it to air. So there's the picture-in-picture I set up. And then turn it off, go to the 2 and bring that in. So if instead you want an aux output, which would be HDMI output 3, then what you want to do is you want to go to the composition menu and change it from pip and key mode. And before I do that, I just want to quickly mention that you can enable a Luma key for the picture-in-picture source. And so you can have it remove black or white video from that source to create an overlay for like text or graphics. But I'm going to go back a page here and change it to aux mode. Now I don't have this output set up, but basically if you want to feed, say, like a center screen, with just the presentation source, then you can have that be your aux output and then do your program switching independently of that aux. Also want to talk about audio here for a bit. So with audio, you basically mix all the HDMI sources 1 through 3 together and the line input. Or you can, instead of a line, you can have HDMI 4's audio in the mix as well. And then there's also a follows. So note that it does not, in matrix mode, pass through the audio independently. So it won't go from, HDMI 1's audio goes from that input to all outputs assigned to it. If you're looking for that kind of audio routing, take a look at the XS80 series, so the 82, the 83, and the 84. And those will allow audio linking as well as audio separation with the matrix routing. And you can set the level here as well. So 100 is 0 dB, and then 127 is a 6 dB boost, and then 0 is muted. And talk again briefly about the still images. You saw I had that still image in split mode. So before this demo, I imported it, a bitmap file on the USB flash drive that's plugged into the back right here. And so here I have a list of bitmap files that were on that flash drive, and it takes about 30 seconds to load. So you just import it right there, and then you can have HDMI source, really any of them, be that still image instead of the HDMI input. So you can see that I turned HDMI 2 into the still image. So you have some flexibility with which input you want the still image to take over. One more thing worth mentioning too is the output format. So not only is there input scaling, but there is output scaling as well. So I have everything coming in, and then it's converted to output at 1080p. But you also have other resolutions that you can output as, including some of these computer resolutions. So you're not limited to just 1080p, 1080i, or 720p. So this is a great audiovisual solution. And you can see there's also an output scaler as well if you need it to make any adjustments for your display. That covers the XS1 HD. Let's just take a moment to review some of the key features of this model. So as you saw, it's like 3 products in one. If you need a matrix switcher for your event, you can run it in matrix mode. If you need a presentation multi-window view, you can create that in split mode. Or if you just need a 4-input switcher with an aux out to feed a center screen, you have switcher mode. So plug and create multi-format input scalers on all 4 inputs. So you can bring in multiple resolutions and it will automatically resize them to match the output resolution. And then you have that EDID emulator if you need it. And again, those switcher mode effects, you have the aux output, or you can do, instead of that, you can do a Luma key and or picture-in-picture. If you have any additional questions, just contact us at Roland Product Support. We'll be happy to help you. Thank you again, and take care.